Good morning, Manchester, and to those of you in the surrounding towns. I am your host, Rich Girard, here on AM1250 WGAM. You're listening to Girard at Large. Our time is 8:08. Our website is girardatlarge.com, and we're on Facebook and Twitter, also at Girard at Large. We are joined now in studio by Caron. He is the vice chair of the Goffstown Budget Committee, and make note, those of you in Manchester and surrounding towns, there's a real bloodbath taking place over the budget in Goffstown, and everybody needs to pay attention to what's going on. Guy, thank you for joining us here this morning on Girard at Large, because you know they say all government is local, and when local government runs amok, which it sounds like is happening in the town of Goffstown, we all need to take notes to make sure that we're taking care of our own backyard. So, Guy, we carried a news story here on Girard at Large earlier in the week in which some of the spending, the tax increases caused by the spending hikes that are looming in the town of Goffstown were discussed. What is going on in Goffstown?
It's less attributable to spending hikes than it is to loss of revenue from state and federal sources that we've enjoyed over a number of years. The problem, the bloodbath hasn't occurred yet because the taxpayers haven't seen what their tax bill is going to be. The form of government in Goffstown is a little bit different than what people in Manchester are familiar with seeing. Now
you have a Board of Selectmen in Goffstown.
Yeah, we have a form of government that's called SB2, Senate Bill 2. It was adopted in Goffstown about 15 years ago. And the way that works is that we are governed by a Board of Selectmen. We've got five of them. And then we have a school board that runs the school side. Unlike Manchester, where the budget for the town and for the city and the school is all handled by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. In Goffstown, you've got two separate bodies working on two separate budgets. The problem that we're having right now...
Well, where does the Budget Committee come in?
Well, this is part of SB2. The way SB2 works is that when it was adopted, like I mentioned about 15 years ago, the budgets are prepared separately, one by the Board of Selectmen and the other one by the school board. And they are presented at what's called a town meeting. And under SB2, town meeting is broken into two separate parts. The first is what's called deliberative sessions. There's one for the town and one for the school. And then the second is the actual vote on the first Tuesday in March. Well, what happens at deliberative session is that the taxpayers or the voters can come in and they can make motions to alter any appropriation article, including the operating budgets, okay?
Of both the schools and the town.
Right, but that's done at two separate deliberative sessions. The vote is one day, but the deliberative sessions are on different days. And any alterations that are made appear on the ballot, and when it comes to the budgets, if the budgets are voted down, state law provides for what's called a default budget. So that, you know, if they have a budget that's voted down, they've got to have money to operate. So the default budgets will kick in, and state law, this is another problem we have, is the way it defines how to arrive at a default budget. But I'll get to that.
I was just going to ask, where does the default budget come from?
Well, the wording is vague. Basically, you come up with a default budget by taking the previous year's budget, and then you adjust it up or down for one-time expenditures, contractual obligations such as pay raises, etc. And you come up with a number so that the school and the town can at least operate if their requests are voted down. But there's a problem with that.
Okay.
What they do, since the law is not clear, they start with the appropriated budget from the year before, what was granted to them, whether they spent it or not. Now, last year the school districts gave back $600,000 that they did not spend. But they will take that budget that was $600,000 higher than they needed, and they start with that number to come up with this year's default. So it artificially inflates the number.
Okay.
This year, the two budgets are so close. I mean, we're talking $100,000 perhaps on the school side of a budget that's $36-some-odd million. So it's not doing the taxpayers much good.
A little town like Goffstown spending $36 million on its schools?
Just the schools. Now, in addition to these budgets, let's take this year. Because of the loss of revenue on the school side, there still were no adjustments made to compensate for that on the school side. The town's budget, being about a third of the tax dollar is relatively level to what it was last year. The schools is also, although they came in, I think, close to $500,000–600,000 higher, asking for more money.
So they had a $600,000 increase, and how big was the revenue shortfall?
That's well over $1 million. It's going to be.
So it's well over $1 million. So you say you're probably pushing a $2 million swing to the taxpayer in terms of increased spending and lost.
What it's going to mean to the taxpayer this year, no matter what happens, if both default budgets pass, or in other words, if the proposed budgets fail, and no other appropriation article passes, a homeowner with a house that's valued at $250,000 is going to see his taxes go up $500. Now, keep in mind, the school district also is asking for almost $3 million in addition to this for a sports complex at the high school and $15 million to renovate a couple of the schools. Now, that's a lot of money to be asking for at a time like this. Now, the Budget Committee gets to recommend or not recommend these appropriation articles, but we can't adjust them.
Gerard at Large, time is 8:14. We are with Guy Caron, Vice Chairman of the Goffstown Budget Committee, here on AM1250 WGAM. Okay, so where are we in the process now, and why are you predicting that there's going to be quite an eye-popping tax increase in the town of Goffstown?
Well, it's not a prediction, it's mathematics. It's going to happen, okay. Unfortunately.
Well, what has the Budget Committee gone through the process of recommending or not recommending? Has the Budget Committee done its thing, so to speak?
We just did that Tuesday night.
Okay, so what happened Tuesday night?
We went to public hearing a week ago with the proposed budgets. And at those hearings, the public can come in and ask questions. We make a presentation of how we arrived at the school's budget and how we arrived at the town budget. But there's something I need to mention before that. Earlier I had mentioned that I discussed the adoption of SB2, form of government.
Right.
Well, in Goffstown, we opted, there's an option that you can go with, and we adopted it, is to, instead of having the governing bodies form or develop the budgets are developed by the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee is an option in SB2. And what it is that you do this so that you have a buffer between the governing bodies and the people paying for what they want. So these are elected officials. Some are appointed by the governing bodies. But basically, you're advocates for the taxpayers. So it's not the school boards who develops the budget. It's us. What the school board and the town do is that they come in with basically a wish list.
So they make proposals to the Budget Committee, and then the Budget Committee actually formulates the budgets that the townsfolk will vote on.
But let me tell you where the spin is here, okay? Especially on the Goffstown School District side. Last year was the real bloodbath, because they came in with their wish list. We adjusted that budget downward by almost $3 million without touching a dime on any of the teacher pay lines or any of the paraprofessionals. The propaganda machine in Goffstown spun this thing by saying we had cut their budget, which is not true. We increased the budget.
Yeah, you cut the rate of increase.
Correct. But they will spin this into thinking that the Goffstown Budget Committee, and then they announced they were going to have to lay off 36 teachers because of this. Okay? They used school resources, email, paper. They sent kids home with notes to the parents.
Oh, that happened in Manchester years and years ago. That didn't go over well.
No. But the idea of announcing to the parents that the Budget Committee cut the budget. Let me give you an example. Let's say you got a guy who's out in his yard, his neighbor pulls in and he's got a brand new Mercedes. And this guy, boy, I'd love to have a Mercedes too, but I can't afford it. So what does he do? He's making $20 an hour. He walks into his boss's office. He demands a pay raise of $5 an hour. The boss says, I can't afford $5, but I'll give you $2. Does that guy go home and tell his wife he just took a $3 an hour pay cut? Of course not. But that's what they do. And it's an incredible disservice to the taxpayers to mislead them with disinformation like that. Mm-hmm. And you know, obviously there's a difference between misinformation, which is usually accidental, or when you do it on purpose.
Which is disinformation.
Correct.
Okay. So last year there was a big brouhaha then over cuts that didn't happen. Now, did those cuts go through, or was the budget committee overturned?
Okay, here's the other flaw in SB2. And like I mentioned, there's a couple of bills going through the legislature right now that would stop this. When you get the deliberative session with the numbers that the budget committee had last year, a small group comes in, makes a motion to put all the monies back in to adjust budgets by millions of dollars. Budgets they have no idea, they don't know anything about them, have never seen. And all the work is undone.
So, in other words, the budget committee can make its proposals, and now does the deliberative session take place both before and after the budget committee makes its recommendations, or only after?
Only after.
So the budget committee can make its recommendations after taking the data from the school board and the board of selectmen. You take that data, you formulate the budget. You send the budget out to deliberative session, and then someone can come in at the deliberative session, make a motion to basically cut or spend whatever they want. If it passes, you're stuck with it.
Correct. That's what goes on the ballot.
So has the deliberative session happened?
No, not yet. They're coming up in February.
So now what happened at so the deliberative session is coming up in February, and does the budget committee, did the budget committee make recommendations to the town people that were reductions in spending, either because they reduced the rate of growth or they made actual cuts, or did the budget committee make a recommendation that's going to cause people's taxes to go through the roof?
The current budgets on the town side is going to result in a lower tax rate.
On the town side?
On the town side. On the school side, it's not.
Okay.
The schools, the $500 increase I mentioned on a $250,000 home would be in the 600 some odd range if it had not been for the offset reduction on the town side.
On the town side.
Okay. Now the flaw I was mentioning about SB2 is that I understand the spirit of the law where the governing bodies prepare the budgets. The taxpayers should have the opportunity to make adjustments to those at deliberative. But if you've elected or chosen the option of having a budget committee do it, that should not be amendable at deliberative. The voters should have a choice between the budgets developed by the people they elected to do it. And that's not happening.
So in essence, there are four budgets circulating around in the Goffstown budget process. The one recommended by the school board, the one recommended by the selectmen, and then the recommendations of the budget committee once they get their hands on it.
No, actually, there's...
Because I'm assuming that, well, let me rephrase, because I'm assuming that when you get the data from the selectmen and the school board, you called it a wish list, but I'm assuming that wish list contains their desires to run their operation.
Yes.
So it isn't in fact a budget request they're making to the budget committee.
It's a budget request. That's
that they're making to the budget committee. So it's like departments going to the mayor saying, we want this.
Right.
So you've got these publicly elected bodies making their budget request to the publicly elected budget committee, and the budget committee reviews the request, and it comes out with its school budget and its town budget. So you have what you started with, because that's public record, then you have what you recommended, that's public record. So someone can go to the deliberative session and say, I make a motion that the school board's original request to the budget committee be adopted, and that can happen.
That's exactly what happened last year.
So that's exactly what. How much did the taxes go up last year as a result of that?
You know, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. Because Goffstown, I'll tell you, Goffstown ain't exactly a low-tax community.
No, it's not. And a large portion of that is due to the fact that we have such a small commercial tax base. The bulk of our taxes are generated through residential.
What percentage of your tax base is commercial?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I've got like, I think 5 or 7% kicking in my head as the percentage.
That's starting to sound familiar.
And it's probably all in Bernardville.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah. So maybe you know what? Maybe we should form a compact. Maybe West Manchester and Goffstown, and maybe we can talk Bedford into it. Should form its own city.
That's not a bad idea. Actually, Goffstown's big enough, in my opinion, to change our government to a board of mayor and aldermen.
Aurora Eaton, who's the executive director of the Historic Association here, we walked through how West Manchester was formed, and frankly, West Manchester used to be parts of Goffstown and Bedford.
Yeah.
Goffstown, Bedford used to come right to the river.
That's right.
Landscape Village, Piscataquag Village, what we call the Flatiron District, and McGregorville.
Narragansett number 4, way back when.
Narragansett number 4. All right, so and forgive me for asking this again. So the Budget Committee has taken its actions. What came out of the Budget Committee's actions?
We have made our recommendations on all non-budget appropriation articles.
Now, did you make reductions from what the school board and the town asked, or just the town and the school? What's the budget committee makeup? Is it a fairly conservative group? We populated by special interest there.
It was very conservative for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
This year, we lost a number of fiscal conservatives. Some moved out of town, others were transferred. And what happened during the elections last year is that the small group of school activists from that year, a bunch of them ran for the budget committee, and through nothing more than mathematics, 4 of them were elected. In fact, 1 ran unopposed. So now we basically have a split on the committee, and it's tough to get things done.
How many members are on the committee?
Right now there are 14. 2 of them were appointed to fill vacancies. 3 right now are appointed. This is another problem, because you have an appointee from the Board of Selectmen who is always going to vote yes on any motions to maintain the Board of Selectmen's budget, and you have an appointee from the school board. So that's another bill that's going through the legislature right now to change that these people should be non-voting members.
Gee, you're making the system in Manchester look sane.
Compared to what we're doing, it is.
All right, so believe it or not, we're running down on time. We only have a couple minutes left. So what do the people in the town of Goffstown, and I would assume the towns that send their kids to Goffstown High School, who, if the spending on the school side goes up, then the freight they've got to pay to send their kids to Goffstown High goes up. And New Boston, I don't need to tell you, New Boston's been making noise about maybe teaming up with another community instead of sending their kids to Goffstown.
So it will affect things in Goffstown too?
So what do the residents of Goffstown need to know about where things are and what they need to do if they have any hope of not getting blown out of their houses next year?
They're going to get blown out.
So is it a fait accompli? There's nothing that can be done?
There's only one thing they can do. They need 2 things they can do. First one is in February. Go to the school deliberative session and reduce that budget. You can reduce, there's a 10% rule. You can't cut a proposed budget by more than 10%. But take $3.6 million off that school budget if you don't want to get hit that bad. The second thing they need to do in March, go to the polls and vote out every member of the Goffstown School Board and start putting people in there who have less of an entitlement mentality and are more concerned with getting the kids educated for a reasonable price.
I just forgot my question. Isn't that great? Does Goffstown have some kind of a taxpayers association?
No, there was a...
Is there any, sort of organized resistance to the never-ending march of the union forces that love more and more spending in that town, or what?
That enjoy spending? No, we had I ran the Goffstown Residents Association for up until last year.
Okay.
I'm sort of putting that on hold right now due to other commitments that I have, but I plan on resurrecting it again soon.
All right, so you are the resistance.
There's about 400 members.
400 members. Well, that's certainly something to coordinate and organize, and I hope you'll keep us up to date on what's happening in that little hamlet to the west here of the city of Manchester, and will be instructive not only to the taxpayers of Manchester, who, without organized resistance would probably be, facing similar increases in spending and taxes, and to the other towns in our, in our listening area, to know that, gee, if it can happen in Goffstown, it probably is happening in their backyard too.
It's interesting, I haven't seen it happen everywhere else. I'm watching other school boards make reductions, looking for ways to help the taxpayers and educate the kids, but I don't see it there.
Well, I guess you're going to have to go after that. Now, Guy, if people want to learn more about what's happening with the Goffstown budget or the budget committee, or if there's just a repository for your recommendations, where do they go?
They would go to the Goffstown.com website,
Goffstown.com.
and we're all listed there. They can contact any of us there. I'm vice chair, Dan Cloutier's the chairman, and any of the members. And all the voting records are all part of the minutes. If you want to know why somebody voted a certain way, call them up and ask them.
All right. Guy Caron, vice chairman of the budget committee in the town of Goffstown, thank you for bringing this, I found it really intriguing sort of set of circumstances in Goffstown to our listeners' attention. We hope you'll keep us up to date on what's going on. And I don't know, I guess we'll follow this one.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks.
All righty. Cruise out roads.
Thank you.